SpongeBob SquarePants is one of the most iconic show from my generation. Pretty much everybody and their grandma knows this little yellow sponge and his red tie. Yeah, you never know SpongeBob has a tie there? He's all dressed up to go to work. Created by Steven Hillenburg, R.I.P., SpongeBob is a show about a guy named SpongeBob. But explaining to you what SpongeBob's about is kind of pointless since, like I said, everybody knows this show. But hey, what do I think about this show? Pretty much everybody who grew up in my generation, SpongeBob was an integral part pretty much every kid's childhood, from kids growing up in the 90s to 2000s and to modern day, because like I said, the show keeps on airing and rerunning constantly on Nickelodeon. It's pretty well known that SpongeBob is Nickelodeon's cash cow, and for good reason. This show is really good. From popsicles to delicious gummy candy, giant inflatables on top of Burger Kings, real-world knockoff restaurants, to MTV dancing SpongeBob to Blink-182's, all the small things. Yeah, this actually exists, and it's glorious. Essentially, SpongeBob's been on everything, and he's been knocked off a ton. And he's never lost his cultural appeal because, like I said, this is the only thing Nickelodeon has going for them now, since they kind of failed as a company and have done some pretty shady things behind the scenes, especially with their live-action department. But let's talk about SpongeBob Season 1. It was conceptualized around the time of 1997, and it first aired in 1999, and it's ended its run near the first half of the 2000s. And this season's pretty well known for a certain reason, and that being the art style, because as you can see, every single animation here is done on cell, which is the old style where someone basically draws all hand and paints it by hand, including all the backgrounds. So everything you see here was done by hand and no computerization. This means you actually can buy animation cells from the first season and first season only, and that includes the memes. Somewhere out there, this caveman SpongeBob cell exists. It's probably worth a fortune, but who knows? Maybe it's destroyed. You got fortunate. Sometimes the animation cells are destroyed. The reason I point this out because it's the most obvious thing that compares season 1 to other seasons. It has this unique charm in its animation that you don't see a lot. Cell animation just looks great. It's very expensive and hard to do, so it makes sense why they swapped it, but I just love the look of the way season 1 looks. Probably why it's my favorite season. No reason why this is one of my favorite seasons, just because there's so many good episodes. 41 sub-episodes, basically. We count each little segment as their own episodes, mostly. And most of them are pretty much gold, not really anyone being bad. So 41 great episodes is a pretty great sign of quality.
Thank you!
Anyway, for the making of this video, I'm going to do something different that I haven't done in the other TV shows I reviewed, because SpongeBob is the longest one with the amount of episodes in general, even counting the fact these episodes are usually just 11 minutes long, is that I'm going to be doing them based on where I rank them, from my least favorite to favorite. The main reason I'm doing this is because SpongeBob is episodic, meaning that there's not a whole lot of continuity or storylines in between, if any at all. But yeah, that's why I'm doing it this way, since I don't really need to go, oh, this happens this episode, this happens this episode. This is going to be my short, quick ranking of all the episodes in my reviews. With all that said, stick your legs up in the air and get ready to do the sponge. Number 41 is Reef Blower. Reef Blower is a very short, silent episode from the actual first episode, if that makes any sense. We count the sub-episodes, what we're counting here, not the episodes themselves. Because the first episode 3 episode segments, if that makes any sense. Not a whole lot happens in this little micro episode. This seems to be more like a test footage than anything else, seeing it's paired with the first 2 episodes of the series. Well, this is the second episode, I'm speaking. Meaning this is most likely just test for getting some characterization stuff down. And since it's mostly silent, there's not a whole lot going on here. Other than SpongeBob sucking up the whole ocean in his reef blower, which, okay, I'm not sure that's possible, but hey, it's cartoon logic. You can't question stuff. It's a fine episode, but nothing spectacular, and it's kind of over before you begin. Number 40 is going to be Valentine's Day. This is probably the episode with the paper, which is the episode they came with. They probably aired the least from season 1, because I don't really remember seeing this episode maybe once. At a holiday where you just give everyone heart-shaped stuff. Well, maybe that's how SpongeBob celebrates it, so it's not a romantic holiday unless SpongeBob's trying to romance Patrick. I know there's some fan fiction about that. It's kind of a cliche plot, which SpongeBob usually makes its own unique plots for the most part. So here it's kind of uninteresting to see all the characters can get a gift they want and them throwing a little hissy fit. This episode is kind of bland, to be honest. It's one of those I forget about, and most likely I probably will forget about it as soon as it's over, because it's not that interesting.
Oh, SpongeBob, you didn't have to give me anything.
Number 39, Home Sweet Pineapple. This episode, so that's why I rank it so low. It's not bad, but it's a very uneventful episode. SpongeBob and Patrick have to rebuild SpongeBob's house after it gets eaten by nematodes, and that's pretty much SpongeBob has to go back with his parents. Before he does that, he plants a seed and cries, and his tears makes his house grow back. And that's pretty much it for this episode. I guess Squidward acts like an asshole and he gets crushed by the pineapple house. I guess regroup back at the library that SpongeBob has in his house. Did anybody else really want to go to this part of SpongeBob's house? It looks so fun. Number 38, jellyfishing. This is one of those episodes that tortures Squidward, and here's not as justified as he is in some other episodes. This is not bad like future seasons, but it's kind of like he doesn't really do anything or say, oh, jellyfishing is stupid, and then he gets stung, and then he gets injured the whole episode afterward. Even as a kid, I kind of felt bad for Squidward here. He didn't really do much. I mean, he was kind of a jerk, but not like worth getting this badly injured over this. Also, the moral of this episode is not as good as the other ones, being the fact that even when Squidward joins in the jellyfishing, he gets tortured for it. Like, what is the lesson? The reason I mentioned the lesson, since most of these SpongeBob episodes usually do have a lesson, even if it's minor, and they work pretty well for most of the time. Here, it just doesn't really work. Sponge and Patrick aren't really dicks of Squidward, but they are neglectful for the most part. And just the fact that he gets tortured for basically not really wanting to jellyfish, even though he kind of does. In hindsight, this episode should probably be ranked lower, but hey, I guess I kind of like it a bit, but oh well. Number 37, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 2. This episode is kind of weird because for some reason SpongeBob decides he's going to abuse his heroes for no reason when he gets a conch shell from winning a prize. And yeah, just ain't too interested in this because like I said, SpongeBob kind of like an ass here. Though you could say it's kind of stupid for them to even go help him out anyway, because they could just flat out ignore it or get rid of the conch, but whatever. I'm overhyping exaggerating a little bit. This episode is fine, has some good jokes. The idea of an invisible boatmobile is hilarious. I know it's taken from Wonder Woman comics, but having an invisible vehicle makes no sense. It's kind of fun. But overall, I'm not too big a fan of the first two Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy episodes. And you can guess what the next episode is. Number 36, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. This episode is just the definition of okay. It introduces the characters of, you guessed it, Mermaid and Barnacle Boy, and SpongeBob and Patrick want them to come out of retirement. But they're old, and that's pretty much the whole joke. They don't really do anything interesting with this concept. They're just old, they are slow. It's not really that funny, but it's okay.
Patrick, old people are the greatest. They're full of wisdom and experience.
Once again, not a bad episode. There's no bad episode in Season 1, but it's a little slow on the slow side. But hey, I don't mind slow episodes. Number 35, Scaredy Pants. This was the other episode that wasn't really aired that much when I was a kid. Most likely because of the fact it was a Halloween episode. The best part about this episode is the aesthetic, being someone who really likes Halloween, and it has this nice, cozy colors going on. Unfortunately, the story is just okay for it. This episode is about SpongeBob trying to go around and scare people because he's scared of everybody else. And that's about it. This episode is pretty much carried alone by its aesthetics.
Oh, Dad, you're embarrassing me again!
Also, my favorite thing about this episode is Sandy's costume, and the fact that Squidward actually gets into Halloween. It's kind of fun, nice little detail there, I like that. Number 34, Sandy's Rocket. This is definitely one of the more out there episodes, so there is another episode that's also kind of weirdly sci-fi. Sandy's Rocket, I prefer that episode over this one. This episode basically, SpongeBob and Patrick kind of act like idiots. Now, they aren't the smartest characters, but usually that's Patrick's category, but here for some reason they think they landed on the moon where everybody is an alien, even though they look like the same people, whatever. And I don't really care, whatever, they think they're aliens. They don't really do much of the concept other than catching Squidward the first time. They just catch everybody else, and that's most of the whole episode. Not really that much full of laughs, at least in my opinion. I think the first half of the episode where they're waiting to go out in space and then do stuff in Sandy's Rocket is more entertaining than catching aliens. Because all they really do is just catch everybody in Bikini Bottom, and that's pretty much it. There's not much humor after that. Like, I guess it's not really that funny in my opinion. It's okay. I wish they had more jokes about it.
Wow. Bikini Bottom sure looks different.
Number 32, Boating School. This is the first Boating School episode. Really is the only one in this season. There's another episode with Mrs. Puff, and she appears in background in some episodes, but season 1 doesn't have a whole lot of Mrs. Puff going on. It's the only episode where he actually drives a boat. Well, kinds of drives a boat. He kind of failed. Am I the one who also wanted this unicycle that SpongeBob rides? I don't know. Probably impractical because school works underwater, but I always wanted it.
Hey, I just got my license!
Hey, I'm getting mine next.
Hey, I doubt it!
Boating School is the most basic Boating School episode of SpongeBob. I mean, it's the first. Basically, Patrick is getting SpongeBob directed because, oddly enough, Patrick knows how to drive, even though he doesn't have a boat. I think he's too broke to afford a boat, but anyway, it almost works until SpongeBob fails at the very end.
Oh, SpongeBob! Why?
Mrs. Puff?
Fun fact, this is the first episode to have the iconic phrase, "my leg." Pretty basic episode. SpongeBob tries to get a pet jellyfish, Bob's a wild animal, and things go kind of crazy. There isn't a whole lot to say about this episode. A bunch of jellyfish want to party all night and all day in SpongeBob's house, and it ignores Squidward and SpongeBob for obvious reasons. Don't invite jellyfish into your houses. Got it. Number 31, Help Wanted. Squidward and Mr. Krabs have a bit of weird coloring, especially Mr. Krabs' eyes and Squidward's like kind of palish color complexion. Maybe you got tan between episodes. So does SpongeBob. It does a pretty good job introducing all the characters. The most interesting thing about it is that we actually get to see SpongeBob get hired to the Krusty Krab, which is, as a kid, I thought, wow, that's really cool. I didn't even know this was the first episode because, you know, they air randomly on TV when you're a child. So it's pretty great as a pilot. As a regular episode, it's fine. It introduces a lot of things about SpongeBob, and I can definitely see why a network want to pick this up. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Help Wanted. Everyone wants to see this episode, and everyone knows it. Number 30, The Paper. SpongeBob plays with a paper that Squidward threw away. It's not the most exciting idea for an episode, but it actually works pretty well because they do a whole lot with it. Pretty basic. Squidward throws the paper away, thinks it's useless. SpongeBob has a lot of fun with it, and Squidward's like, I can have just as much fun as you can, SpongeBob. But he fails miserably. And when he gets to the end, he realizes that it's not as fun as he thought, most likely because he lacks imagination.
Imagination.
These are the best kind of Squidward episodes to me because it's mostly Squidward's own undoing that does it. SpongeBob doesn't really do anything to him. He plays a piece of paper, and Squidward's like, here's my house, I want this paper! Because Squidward isn't the smartest character sometimes.
Hooray! Hooray! That was great, Squidward. All those wrong notes you played made it sound more original.
Number 29, Pickles. This episode introduced the kids to the world of existential crisis. After SpongeBob forgets to put pickles in a burger, he starts losing control and forgets how to do pretty much everything. This isn't like the most funniest episodes, but it's pretty compelling when it comes to the plot. I don't think a lot of people have been there who are just like really out of it after failing once, and this episode kind of helps you a little bit, alright? And it turns out the pickles are under this guy's tongue the whole time.
Look! He's been hiding the pickles under his tongue the whole time.
And there's the pickles from last time, too!
And there's my car keys.
Number 28, I Was a Teenage Gary. This is basically a SpongeBob horror episode where SpongeBob becomes a snail after getting hit by snail plasm. And this is technically all Squidward's fault since he forgot to take care of Gary when SpongeBob was away. And yeah, I actually really like this episode. It's a dark tune in all the best ways. It has dark theming, but it's kind of horror-esque, and a lot of funny jokes are told throughout it. I just kind of like that aspect of it. This episode also has some off-mile Squidward, where he looks really lanky, but I kind of love that. This is an episode where they're either going to like it or you're not going to like it. I'm personally in the like it category. Number 27, Sleepy Time. This episode's only ranked lower than I probably would have ranked it because of the ending, which even as a kid I didn't like. After SpongeBob gets kicked out of his own dream, he starts invading others' dreams, and I guess they get mad about it, even though he doesn't really do a whole lot to most of the people here. Like, why is Gary mad? He was barely in his dream, didn't do anything bad mean to him. Also, why would they even know that it was SpongeBob going directly in their dreams, not just them dreaming of SpongeBob? If the only way for another character to appear in someone else's dream, if that means they're dream hopping, then Mrs. Puff dream hopped into SpongeBob's dream first. That's how he got knocked out, right? So why is she off the rails here? I think that nitpick's just a weird me thing. I have certain preferences. You know, we all have that thing that just bothers us and probably bothers no one else. Anyway, the rest of the episode's pretty cool, especially seeing what the other characters dream about.
Must be Squidward.
Number 25, Employee of the Month. Not to be confused with the PC game of the same name. Just remember this game? I never actually played it all the way through, but I had a demo for it. I really need to get this game. I'm digressing. SpongeBob's scared of losing his Employee of the Month record since he's been Employee of the Month for a very long time. In fact, it's been like years and years according to the Employee of the Month board here. Oh well. And Squidward decides that he wants to win the award just to spite SpongeBob, and then he gets obsessed with winning the award too. So the rest of the episode is just the two characters fucking each other, trying to stop the other one from being Employee of the Month. And somehow this episode ends with the Krusty Krab getting destroyed. Never really understood that, but okay. So who wins? Who knows? I guess Mr. Krabs is in the wrong for giving out awards to the employee who does the best work. Yeah, I don't really understand the ending here. Number 25, Squeaky Boots. Mr. Krabs scams SpongeBob by selling him crappy new boots. But as you'll learn by watching this series, you know that SpongeBob cannot be scammed because he just accepts anything he gets and makes the best of it. He loves these boots, but the squeaks annoy Mr. Krabs as it becomes a parody of a Telltale Heart. I'm not even joking about that So Mr. Krabs eats the boots. I'm not making up. He actually literally eats it.
Why did you eat my boots, Mr. Krabs?
Just the randomness of him eating the boots to get rid of them is probably one of the funniest things here. He also gives SpongeBob back his money. But he doesn't give him a bonus. You know, he probably should have. SpongeBob carries your whole restaurant there, Mr. Krabs. Number 24, Suds. This episode successfully does what a lot of other TV shows can't. Make an episode where a sick character is actually interesting and funny. I'm not a big fan when the character gets a cold because it just reminds you what colds are like, and they suck, and they don't really do a whole lot of stuff with it. Colds suck, there's not a whole lot to do with them. The kind of character sleeps and like, oh, I gotta do this. Because SpongeBob has a made-up disease, especially for sponges, called the Suds, they're actually able to do some funny things with it. After Patrick convinces SpongeBob that doctors are bad, he tries to give him medical treatment, which basically all fail. While Sandy is trying to get SpongeBob to an actual professional doctor. And the only way for SpongeBob to get rid of his Suds is that he needs to clean his own back, well, his voice actor's back, and his foot, apparently. Did Dan Snyder direct this scene? And Patrick gets his own version of treatment, but his is torture because, you know, he was being a bad doctor here. Be careful of that starfish, man. Number 23, Fools in April. It's April 1st, SpongeBob's favorite holiday. April Fool's, and he plays little pranks on all the presents in Bikini Bottom. Like sipping Sky a couple of ice cubes, he only gives him one. Squidward, of course, decides to play his own prank on SpongeBob after getting annoyed by him, which basically makes him get beaten up, but he thinks this is hilarious because Squidward is an asshole.
He's an asshole.
The rest of the episode is Squidward trying to apologize to SpongeBob because he messed up, but for some reason it's really hard for him to do so because Squidward is kind of an asshole. This episode's really funny and also tells you when a joke goes too far. Cruelty is not nice, but putting a one ice cube instead of two is. Number 22, Tea at the Tree Dome. This is a pretty solid episode, however, it kind of goes towards the middle because, while it is funny, it doesn't do anything extraordinary. Count episode 1 as 3 parts, this is definitely the best one of the pilot. Mostly because dehydrated SpongeBob is just really funny, especially his voice. And I have never wanted to drink tea more than I did in this episode, despite the fact that I do not like tea. I'm an American, so I don't drink tea with iced tea, even though I don't drink iced tea. Number 21, Karate Choppers. I wasn't a big fan of this episode as a kid because of one scene, and this scene here, because I was scared of hot sauce, especially since SpongeBob's voice actor's face scared me, I guess. I don't know. I was a pretty stupid kid. This episode isn't the greatest, however, near the end, it becomes like a whole euphemism for like sex between the two characters in a kid's show, essentially, and that is hilarious. I mean, if you haven't seen this out of context, it looks like they did the deed. Maybe, I don't really know. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, but I think this is kind of funny. Number 20, The Chaperone. Conceptually, you wouldn't think this episode would be that funny. A prom episode of SpongeBob, starring Pearl, probably the least favorite of the main characters, but hey, they did a pretty good job. This episode works pretty well, including SpongeBob's funny design where he has to wear tall legs in order to be long, tall, and handsome. I think it was tan, not tall. Also, Pearl's ex-boyfriend is hilarious. We've been setting him up as this like really handsome, sexy guy, and then we get to see him, and he looks like this. Meep. Number 19, Arg.
Rev up those fryers, cause I am sure hungry for one. Help! Help! My leg!
The map! I gotta look.
In this episode, Mr. Krabs goes insane after playing a board game with Patrick and SpongeBob and thinks there's real treasure, which there is, but he also drags him along on a wild goose chase. This episode works based off its jokes alone, because they're just hilarious. I can put a lot of clips from this episode out.
East? I thought you said West. No, Mr. Krabs.
Patrick, you're fired.
Well, I don't even work here.
Would you like a job starting now?
Why would I?
You're fired.
It's pretty simple, but it executes its jokes very well, and that's why it's one of the best. Well, best being 19. That just tells you how many good episodes there are in Season 1. Number 18, Nature Pants. This episode's iconic for having 2 memes back to back, and other than that, it's a pretty solid episode. This is another episode I didn't really care for much as a kid because I didn't really understand the concept, but as an adult, it's pretty funny. SpongeBob decides that he wants to be a jellyfish and runs out into nature, where he claims that he is home. Obviously, this kind of fails, and he goes back to civilization in less than a day. Pretty basic concept, but it executes it pretty well. It has a lot of good little jokes like the previous episode, as well as giving a pretty decent message to kids. Sometimes you might want to be out in nature, but it's best to be happy for what you get. At least you don't have some things itching your ass.
Even Squidward misses you!
Number 17, Squidward the Unfriendly Ghost. After thinking that SpongeBob and Patrick killed Squidward when it's actually just a mannequin, Squidward decides that he's going to make them his ghostly slaves and make them do whatever the hell he wants them to do. Of course, this ends up backfiring.
Okay, get in.
This is one of those episodes where there's a Squidward involvement with Patrick and SpongeBob, or it actually works because Squidward does ass-foolish things to them, like basically tortures both Patrick and SpongeBob, and they logically come to the conclusion that he needs to be put to rest. When the bad things happen to Squidward feel justified, it's funnier to laugh at. Plus, episodes like these usually have a lot of good jokes sprinkled in between them.
Watermelon, fresh from the manure field. Your spookiness.
Number 16, the Hull Monitor. After getting appointed the Hull Monitor status, SpongeBob decides it's his duty to protect the city from deranged criminals. Of course, the deranged criminal ends up being himself.
He's just standing there, menacingly.
This episode has a lot of good jokes surrounding the fact that SpongeBob commits crimes while trying to protect the city, and he ends up being considered a maniac. Luckily for him, he doesn't get arrested, because Mrs. Puff gets arrested for all the crimes that she committed. Yeah, for some reason this becomes a running joke of her getting arrested. You wouldn't expect that to be a thing, but it is. Number 14, Ripped Pants. This episode, SpongeBob tries to get popular by playing the same joke over and over again. Of course, this doesn't work that well, because he even tries to fake his own death. The reason why me and a lot of other people might like this episode is because the song at the end, which is a Beach Boys-inspired musical number, which of course is always going to be a highlight in any episode. Also, this episode is the first appearance of Larry the Lobster, so that's something. Number 14, Bubble Stand.
It's a giraffe.
This is another one of those basic episodes, but some of the basic episodes work very well. Squidward wants to blow a bubble at SpongeBob's bubble stand, but fails miserably. And that is because he forgets how to do the technique, and he forgets to bring it around town.
Now it's time to bring it around town. Bring it around town.
I also like how this implies that Squidward's money is, is fake or something, because it bends. Who knew that Squidward was dealing with counterfeit money the whole time? Number 13, Texas. In this episode, Sandy's feeling homesick about her own homestay at Texas. In order to make Sandy stay, SpongeBob and Patrick have to insult Texas in order to get Sandy to stay here.
Patrick, what am I now?
Stupid?
No, I'm Texas.
What's the difference?
Because they insult the name of Texas, they get assaulted by Sandy, who's out to kill them. And something about this is really funny. It has one of my favorite jokes in the entire series right at this point. It turns out they're trying to make Bikini Bottom more like Texas, but they don't really know what Texas is like, because they don't know what pecan pie is. But this ends up working in the end. And here's one of the most expensive animation cells from SpongeBob. Well, I think it is. I can't really find information on it. Number 12, Opposite Day. A pretty basic premise for episode, but executed to perfection. Squidward tries to convince SpongeBob and Patrick that it's opposite day, so they'll act normal, according to him, but of course this ends up backfiring as they do everything the opposite, including pretending to be Squidward, because being the opposite of SpongeBob would be being Squidward.
I'm Squidward, I'm Squidward, Squidward.
This all could have worked out for Squidward if he didn't play such a stupid idea on SpongeBob's and Patrick's head. This is one of those episodes that's hard to describe why it's good, because it is basically showing every case, every joke, so I'm just going to leave it at this. Number 11, Walking Small. It teaches SpongeBob how to be assertive.
Not insertive.
For some reason, there's not a lot of Plankton episodes in Season 1, but every Plankton episode in Season 1 is great. Plankton basically manipulates SpongeBob into doing his own bidding, which is basically being assertive, which basically makes everyone go away from the beach so we can build a chum bucket 2. Which is not the smartest thing in the world, Chum Bucket 1 already failed, but Plankton does Plankton-like things. The lesson that SpongeBob takes away from this is that he shouldn't be aggressive to people, he should be aggressively nice to people. And of course, this makes everyone want to come back to the beach because he is nice. He scared everybody away, and now he's being nice to everybody. Because he can become a surfboard. Number 10, Hooky. SpongeBob plays hooky from work by playing with hooks. That is probably one of the most clever things in the entire show. Conceptually, this episode works incredibly well because of just that idea alone. Characters playing hooky from work, but by literally playing with hooks. Of course, it works because they're also fish, you know. It's actually playing with the idea of the fact that these characters get fished by humans all the time, basically. It's also implied that a kid died here. That's pretty dark. Of course, SpongeBob learns his lesson not to play with the hooks. But overall, this is a pretty solid episode. Just conceptually alone, you know, this is going to be a good episode, and it does throw in a lot of good jokes in it as well. Number 9, Neptune's Spatula. SpongeBob is challenged by God, being Neptune, to become a fast food engineer at his palace, I guess. It's hard to describe, but you know what's going on. You've seen this episode. And if SpongeBob wins, he gets to join himself in the shower. Well, no, not really. The reason why this episode is ranked so high, other than the fact it's a good episode, but it's really just one joke. So both SpongeBob and King Neptune both are racing to see who can make the most amount of burgers or the best one. SpongeBob only makes one burger, but Neptune makes a billion burgers. But SpongeBob's burger is better because he puts love into it, like putting a face on pickles reading a bedtime story. I love that little detail. So Neptune's burger tastes like ass because he uses magic instead of using actual skill. And SpongeBob's burger is so good that he has to eat it twice.
Why, it tastes so good. I think I'd like to try it a second time.
The episode ends kind of weird. Like SpongeBob then gets God powers for 5 seconds, and his plan is to make Neptune work as a Krusty Krab now, even though he's a king, I guess. I don't know, it doesn't really make much sense. Also, Patrick's face is still on his ass. Oh well, everything else is really great, including the fact that Mr. Krabs bets all his money against SpongeBob. What a likable dude. Number 8, Pizza Delivery. One of the most famous episodes from Season 1, Pizza Delivery is a great episode. However, some people might rank it higher. I ranked it at number 8. Pizza Delivery is actually an incredibly basic episode with a very basic premise. SpongeBob and Squidward have to deliver a pizza from the Krusty Krab to a little guy who wants a pizza, even though they serve burgers. But man, does that pizza look delicious.
A fine-looking pizza.
Yeah.
Oh, looks good, huh?
The reason a lot of people like this episode is actually the ending, when they finally deliver the pizza to the customer. The fish acts like an asshole because even though he didn't order a soda, he acts like he's supposed to get a soda, particularly a Diet Dr. Kelp.
My Diet Dr. Kelp? Don't tell me you forgot my drink!
But you didn't order any.
How am I supposed to eat this pizza without my drink?
So Squidward decides to throw the pizza in his face, and look at his gut, he needs to lose weight anyway. Number 7, Plankton. Pizza Delivery is an incredibly basic episode, but it's also an incredibly well-executed episode. One of the best that SpongeBob's ever had. Plankton is an episode so good that the one-off character introduced in it ended up being one of the main characters in the show, that being Plankton. Yeah, but you didn't know that Plankton was supposed to be a one-off character, but yeah, this episode ended up being so good that he ended up sticking through the whole series. So you haven't seen SpongeBob ever, you wouldn't know this, but Plankton is out to steal the Krusty Krab secret formula, which is, we don't know what it is actually, it's a secret, alright? And he always tries to get SpongeBob to tell it. This is the first time he tries to get the sponge to tell him something. His original plan is actually pretty good. Since Plankton is so small, being the fact he is a plankton, he's actually able to go inside SpongeBob's brain and able to use SpongeBob to do his own bidding. An actually pretty well thought out plan there, Plankton.
Shut your mouth, you mediocre clarinet player.
Mediocre?
This is my lab. And this is my laboratory.
And in the background, we have Plankton's computer wife, Karen, who was just a base computer in this episode, who was voiced by a temporary voice actor, being the wife of SpongeBob's voice actor, Tom Kenny. They didn't know that. But yeah, this character also ended up being a mainstay and been used way more in episodes, especially more in recent years than old SpongeBob. Plankton fails at this plan only because he gets so hungry for the Krab Patty that he decides to eat it, which ends up making him get sucked in his own machine. But that's okay, Plankton's a pretty smart guy, after all.
I went to college.
Number 6, Naughty Nautical Neighbors. This is definitely one of the best concepts of the SpongeBob and Patrick messing with Squidward episode, because here, he absolutely deserves it. Squidward doesn't like the fact that SpongeBob and Patrick were basically doing nothing to him, but he's like, fuck these guys, I'm gonna mess with their day. Basically makes him break up.
Solitude in E minor.
Yeah, E minor, alright, yeah!
And now Patrick and SpongeBob are fighting over Squidward for his affection, because they want him to be his new best friend. Plays the concept great, but there's so many good jokes, I can list them. Like this one, my favorite one. The most relatable part of SpongeBob, where he has no friends, so he has to write them on his fingers.
Hangs all here.
I guess SpongeBob forgot that Sandy's also his friend. Oh well. Also, Patrick is so fat that Squidward throws out his back trying to carry him. But luckily for Squidward, SpongeBob's a chiropractor. To stop his torture, Squidward makes SpongeBob and Patrick become friends again after drinking a bunch of seltzer water. I didn't know what this was as a kid. And even a talented musician, well not really, he doesn't know how to play cello, that's for sure. For me, this is actually be the episode I show somebody who's never seen SpongeBob before and wanted to get them in the series. It's just a perfect explanation of the series. Number 5, MuscleBob Buff Pants. Established in the first episode, SpongeBob is quite a weakling when it comes to lifting weights. So he decides to fake it till he makes it by buying anchor arms and make it look like he has giant muscles. Yes, especially since SpongeBob is so fucking weak in this episode. But it turns out that Sandy is super jacked. Like, geez, Moise. Just the idea of SpongeBob being ripped, but just pretending to be ripped is just super funny. Like him, especially him, like bragging about it is hilarious. Is the concept funny? But there's so many other little jokes in between that just work so well. The lesson is you can't fake it till you make it. You gotta work it out unless you want to get ripped. Well, SpongeBob failed miserably at getting ripped. Number 4, SpongeBob Season 1, Episode 29, or SB-129. One of the most surreal episodes of the entire show. Squidward wants to avoid Patrick and SpongeBob from going jellyfishing. He doesn't have to join them, but he's like, screw you guys, I'm running away. And then it ends up him getting locked in the freezer and he gets thawed out 2,000 years later. In the future, everything's chrome, which showcases that it is the future. The aesthetics of this episode are pretty much top-notch. The future area feels like going to Tomorrowland Disney World. The past is kind of weird and odd. Everything has a weird aesthetic to it, but in the best way possible. Also, it turns out that Squidward's the one that invented jellyfishing, so he has himself to blame, basically, for jellyfishing. And of course, this episode also taught kids the idea of existentialism during the part where Squidward can be, oh. This episode's great if you like interesting aesthetics or if Squidward's one of your favorite characters, since this does explore Squidward's personality quite a lot. Squidward actually likes being with SpongeBob and Patrick. He just is in his own weird way, because being all alone is fucking creepy as shit.
Barnacle had who invented that game anyway.
You are, Squidward.
Number 3, FUN, or Fun. In our second episode featuring Plankton, SpongeBob actually feels bad for the little guy. And Sponge decides that he's going to befriend Plankton, and maybe that will make him nicer and not try to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula. This episode works not on a comedic level, but just on a character-wise. SpongeBob is a pretty endearing character for the most part. Sometimes they try to make him an asshole, which is why we don't like later seasons as much as the early seasons. But here he's literally trying to give a villain a chance, and he almost seems like Plankton might redeem himself. But unfortunately, Plankton cannot resist the temptation of a Krabby Patty, because nobody can. This episode is funny, but it's mostly just pretty interesting, plus it's got a nice song in the middle. Just don't get your ass sat on by Bubble Bass. Number 2, Culture Shock. How high ranking this is in our people's episode rankings, but this is an episode that I find absolutely hilarious. In the episode, Squidward hosts a talent show in the Krusty Krab purely for his own purpose. He does not give a crap about anybody else. He just wants to showcase that he is a star. He convinces Mr. Krab to do it because his daughter could be a star, even though he only cares about himself. It's funny to see the character's talents and all the little jokes they throw in between here and there. You think that Squidward's going to have some nice talent, maybe he's playing his clarinet or doing something pretty and like very nice and calming, but when he gets on the stage at the very end, you get this.
What the?
Of course, everyone hates his act, and his act ends up being so terrible they actually prefer someone cleaning over his act. I mean, I don't know what he was even trying to do there, but it's hilarious. There's so many good jokes here. Squidward telling really bad, sarcastic jokes before the performance starts. The only person who's laughing is Patrick, who's laughing way too much at it. Stuff like that just is really my type of humor. I don't know why, I just really like it. A bunch of side characters get to shine. There's a whole lot of jokes in this episode, and overall, it's just a fun atmosphere. Culture Shock is one of my favorites. After all 41 episodes, what is my top favorite episode from Season 1? Well, it's number 1, Rock Bottom. In this episode, after taking the wrong bus, SpongeBob ends up trapped inside the deep sea, otherwise known as Rock Bottom, where everything's weird and dark and nothing really makes any sense, including the bus scheduling. Rock Bottom essentially feels like a Looney Tunes cartoon in SpongeBob form. Some of them feel similar to that, but this one especially has that aesthetic charm. Not only that, it just looks great, and the whole setting of Rock Bottom is such a unique place we don't ever really see in SpongeBob ever again. This episode is creepy in the best way possible, where all the deep sea critters being, well, incredibly weird, including their own bathrooms.
Maybe we should wait for one more.
Not only does this episode look good and have a lot of funny jokes, but you also see a new side of SpongeBob. SpongeBob, for the most part, is usually a happy-go-lucky character, but this situation makes him angry and scared. We've seen him scared before, but this time we get to see SpongeBob pissed off, and it's kind of funny, actually. SpongeBob used to have a wide range of emotions. Like I said, SpongeBob goes for a lot of stages, so I'm not sure if this is true with the modern SpongeBob. We'll find out by going through the series, but during this episode, we get to see a wide range of emotion on this character, and it's lovely. I like Rock Bottom quite a bit. And with all that said and done, what is your favorite episode of SpongeBob SquarePants, specifically from Season 1? If you'd like to see more of this, go make sure you give a like and support me in any way possible. And if you want to see more from me, go check out my channel and make sure you give the subscribe button as I do other types of videos. Not SpongeBob, but maybe we'll do more depending on how well you guys like this episode. Well, until then, I thank you all very much, and this is the end of the video. So see ya